Okay.
Welcome, Mime Timers, to another episode of Mime Time, a show where we talk about overcoming the Asian diaspora identity struggle to self-actualize, to become the best versions of ourselves, and to live our best lives. Today we have Ryan Takemiya. Did I pronounce that last one right? Yeah?
You got it.
Oh, yes. And we're going to talk about ushering the Asian American Renaissance. I just came up with this title and it just sounds badass. The Asian American Renaissance. And we're gonna usher it in. I read
Yes.
a couple of articles that Ryan put up on Medium. Shout out to the Asian Creative Network. It's a great community of creatives, people who are like podcasters or artists, what have you, entrepreneurs. It's a really cool community. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, check it out on Facebook. Asian Creative Networks. They're Asian Creative Network. They're not paying me for this, but that's where Ryan and I met. I stalked him from afar, and then I started stalking his Medium articles, and he talks about how to talk about your parents. Like if you don't want to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, but you want to be a creative. And then there was another piece where Ryan talks about the Harlem Renaissance. Was that it? And then compare that.
Yeah,
When are we going to have our Asian American Renaissance? And so
that's
there's
right.
lots of good stuff to talk about. But Ryan, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really honored to be on this awesome podcast. This is great. I love talking about Asian American identity. So it's a treat to be able to just chat about it with you. I am originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a fourth generation, half Japanese, half Chinese Asian American. And which means that both sides of my family have been here for over 100 years. And
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when a lot of people meet me and find that out. It's one of the funniest things is when I'll have like Asian American friends who are either first or second generation, and they'll meet my parents. My parents don't speak with any kind of accent. They just speak American English, and that'll like
it's like, damn, Ryan, your parents
minds.
speak excellent English. It's like,
exactly.
which is so ironic because like me growing up, I got offended if people said like, your English is really good. Growing up in North Carolina or Kansas, people like, your English is really good. And then but then like if I were to meet your parents, because actually I didn't grow up I didn't grow up around a lot of other Asian families or communities. So I don't ever recall meeting second or like third generation parents who spoke perfect fluent English. But sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
No, well, what would even blow their minds even further is that I would tell them that, also most of my grandparents also spoke fluent English and didn't really speak their native languages very well, at least. And they all grew up in California, just like me. So I come from this really, interesting Asian American history, which actually isn't quite as common as you might think. People think that that's like this quintessential Asian American history that you read about in history books, the railroads and the gold rush and all that. But that's actually, we're actually a very small portion of the larger Asian American community. The rest of the community is mostly first or second generation immigrants. So anyway, that's given me a very unique perspective. And I think that even though I'm fourth generation, I was still actually immersed in a lot of the culture, even though I don't speak the languages. I was, brought up with a lot of the food and the culture and the holidays and a lot of the traditions. So I am aware of them. And in fact, I came from the place of wanting to know more, actually wanting to really get more immersed in it. And so I've spent time trying to learn the languages and trying to learn more about the culture and traditions. And I've spent all of my time writing and talking about Asian American identity as a whole, basically. So yeah, that's my story. I also have been an artist for a number of years. I was a professional actor, which is why I wrote that article that you read about how to tell your Asian parents that you want to be a creative, which is, as we all know, a very sticky subject and very difficult conversation to have. So I wrote an article based on my own experiences and the experiences of other Asian American artists that I've spoken with. I feel like that conversation usually goes poorly, but with a little bit of empathy and patience and understanding, that conversation can be actually quite illuminating and can actually bring you closer to your parents, I think, if you do it in the right way. So
Wow, there's so much awesome stuff to delve into. Like,
yeah.
but before I forget, which side of your family, like, is your mom's side Chinese in heritage, or your dad's side?
That's correct. My mom is Chinese. My dad is Japanese. My mom is she's her family's originally from Toisan, so kind of the near Hong Kong area, Cantonese people. And my dad, his family is originally from Kagoshima, which is the southern part of Japan. So it's southern part of Japan and southern part of China, both the south, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like, did like your and both your parents, grew up in California with
Yeah.
English speaking parents, like perfectly native English speaking parents. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then so when you grew up, like, what did you eat at home? What was in your lunchbox, bro? Was it like a mix of, I don't know, like Chinese, some Americanized Chinese food and Japanese food
Right.
and sushi, like, and burgers? I don't know, in San
Yeah.
Francisco. Wow.
Yeah, no, we ate a lot of, mostly American food, but we did eat Chinese and Japanese food on occasion, and especially for holidays and when visiting family and everything. It was sort of reserved for special occasions or special events, celebrations and whatnot. But yeah, most days I was just eating regular, boring old American food, which to be honest, it's funny because it's always like the grass is always greener, right? So like I've
Mhm.
heard a lot of my Asian American friends say they wish that they didn't have such smelly lunches because they got made fun of it, right? But then for me, I wish that I had that I mean, growing up, because everything I ate was so bland.
Mm, yeah,
So
I can relate. Like, looking back, I'm really, I have this Korean childhood experience of growing up in the States, going cafeteria, and then like my mom packed me like in a thermos lunchbox container, some kimchi or some fried rice or whatever, and then kids were like, "Oh, what
yeah,
does that smell?" And
yeah,
then I think maybe at some point I got embarrassed, but then looking back, like, I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of my mom for giving me that stank kimchi ppokeumbap, that's fried rice, in the
yeah,
class, and like, "Oh yeah, you guys wish you had that," you know. But
right.
yeah, you're right. The grass is always greener on the other side. It's so interesting. Like, did you grow up in a community of other like Chinese and Japanese or Asians, like in San Francisco? Like, when you went to school, were there a bunch of other Asians as well? I assume there were in San
Oh yeah,
Francisco.
yeah. There were large. Yeah, even though I was in kind of the suburbs, there were large Asian populations in all of my schools, elementary all the way through high school. I mean, I think my high school is something like 20 to 30-ish% Asian American, and it wasn't just Chinese. It was all different types of Asian Americans, and there was a community of third and fourth generation people around. So there were a lot of other people like me. There were a lot of other Asian Americans who were growing up in the same way. There, in the Japanese American community, there was a lot of like they had a lot of church groups that like little they even had sports that were run through the church groups. So there are a lot of like Japanese American little league baseball and little league basketball teams that I was a part of that with other third and fourth generation kids, and we all knew each other. It was a really nice. It was I when I went to college in New York, and I for the first time I met Asian Americans from other parts of the country who grew up as either the only Asian American in their town or one of very few, and they would always talk about California or the Bay Area specifically, and they would put air quotes around it, but they would always call it Asian American Mecca. And I always thought that was funny, but I kind of see what they mean. It is a place where in certain areas of the Bay Area, you as an Asian American, you can kind of grow up feeling comfortable in your own skin, feeling like you are just normal and regular, and you don't particularly get made fun of, or at least if you do get made fun of, you don't feel like you are in such a small minority that feels threatening to your safety, basically, where people can make fun of you and you can kind of shrug it off because you know that there's there's so many of us that like any poking fun or insults aren't going to be any, usually won't go further than that. That's not to say that there aren't exceptions to that rule, obviously, but that's how I grew up in the East Bay, near in the suburbs of Berkeley and Oakland, basically.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I've been to San
Oh, I was gonna
Francisco.
say,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, where did you grow up? Did you say
I
you grew
grew
up
up I grew up in the South. So I'm
in the
one of
South?
I'm one of those friends from the East, your friends from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Like I grew like North Carolina in the South, and then 1 year in Kansas, like 5th grade in
Oh,
Kansas, and then
wow.
6th grade onward in New England, where there's a decent amount of Asians, but it's not like
Yeah.
the West. It's not like the
Mhm.
Asian Mecca of the West. So
Mhm.
of California, Bay Area, San Fran, and all that. So I grew up being usually the only Asian kid in my class or my neighborhood most of my life. So I had a very
Mhm.
different experience. And even a lot of the communities or the Korean, like for like most of my childhood or my teens, the main Korean American church community that we interacted with, my parents and I, that was like in Boston. That was like an out. We
Mhm.
lived in Rhode Island. We lived in Warwick, Rhode
Mhm.
Island, but the church was Boston Onuri Kyoe, which is like a satellite church of the Onuri Church here in Korea.
Mhm.
And so we would drive an hour like every Sunday, and then sometimes like
Wow.
Wednesday prayer meetings, like drive an hour there and then an hour back, and to meet all these other Korean American brothers and sisters who were like, they went to school in like Lexington, Massachusetts, or whatever the fuck. Like they went to
Mhm.
schools, and it was Massachusetts, a lot of Asians there actually, and Koreans.
Mhm.
So they went to class with other Koreans, but like I was always like the outsider from Rhode Island, even then.
Mhm.
So I always felt, even in church and even in Korean community settings, I always felt like an outsider as well, because we were also
Mhm.
always like on the move as a kid. Like we were always on the move. So like my whole life story, or like my parents like story, yeah, like from my father, the time he, like from when he was born, because he was born in 1951 in the middle of the Korean War, and
Mhm.
then like all the way up until now, to like to me kind of settling in Warwick, Rhode Island,
Mhm.
for like my high school, middle school, high school. Like that was the longest period of time I ever lived in one place. It was like 6 years.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
then and then I went to college for 2 years, dropped out, and I came to Korea 10 years ago. So me
Uh-huh.
being here in Korea is, or like, I mean, and since I moved to Korea, I've moved around from place to place, but like I have not had like that level of stability that perhaps you have, Ryan. I mean, I don't know how many times you've moved in your life, but if you've lived around California, in California, around the Bay Area
Yeah,
your
not
whole life,
many.
I mean, it's like it's different atmosphere, different vibes, like, because for us, like
Mhm.
my family, it was like being on the struggle, being on the move. And now, like, I feel like in my life, like I finally have some stability. Um, and like I turned 30 later this year, and like I'm gonna be able to, like, I want to really
Nice.
make a, like, look back at my life and then distill all like the the best and the worst parts of it, and then like just like share as much wisdom and experience as I can for the next generation.
Mhm.
But anyways, like there's so many tangents I could go off here, but like I just think it's I mean, God bless you, bro. Like I'm kind of envious, but at the same time, like I went through my journey. I had to have gone through mine, and like you go through your journey, and like we all have our different struggles and our different blessings, our different advantages. And like that's just the human condition, and like I think it's so amazing that we have this rich diversity even within Asian diaspora, even within one enclave,
Yeah.
even Korean Americans or Japanese Americans. There's different Chinese Americans. There's Chinese Americans several generations deep in Louisiana. Like there's all these different
Mhm.
stories and enclaves you can find. What do you want to say?
Well, what's interesting is that I've heard, I've traveled the country a lot and spoken to a lot of different Asian Americans through my my career as a public speaker. And what's interesting is that people tend to Asian Americans tend to look at California as like the place where Asian American identity gets defined, and they feel left out of that. They say, well, we're from, we're from the middle of the country, and so we don't feel like we're part of that, or we feel left out of that. But I've met so many people, so many Asian Americans from the Midwest, from the East Coast, from the South, who have that same story. That I feel like that story is actually becoming, has become probably the defining story of Asian America, is this growing up as the one of very few Asians in your town, in your school, in your area, and growing up in a part of the country that is not California. That I feel like that's quickly becoming the Asian American story, and it is
That's a good
so
point.
common. It's so common, and just that feeling of feeling left out of something, feeling like you don't belong. Well, there's nothing more Asian American than that. So if you're Asian American and you're growing up in the middle of nowhere, that is the Asian American story right there. That it is. That's what it is.
Oh, that's so beautifully put, brother. Yeah, like that's a great point, especially recently with like Minari or whatever, all these other films about like a Korean
Yeah.
family living in the sticks or somewhere. I mean, and it's because like, I mean, so like this goes to this amazing period of human history of art and culture that we're able to participate in as Asian American storytellers, storytellers like yourself,
Right.
directors, not book authors, content creators like YouTubers. We can just tell our stories, like me as a podcaster. People can write beautiful music, poetry, paintings, or whatever to express
Yeah.
their childhood experiences and all that. And so it's really like this is the I like, if you look at all of human history and you look at contextually, like I think objectively, I'm biased, but I think this is the best time to be alive in human history. It's like the most prosperous. It's the most peace. Yes, there's all this war and bullshit and, a cheeky pandemic and
Mm.
whatever. Something's going over in like Eastern Europe. I'm not sure what's going on, but I heard there's some shit going down. And then,
Yeah, something.
and then, but like, I still think this is the best time in human history to be alive. And especially for Asia, we are in the Asian century.
Mm.
So Asia has become this like crazy region of like economic power as well as cultural power and political power. And that also feeds like back into the Asian diaspora, and that's Asian Americans, Asian Canadians, Asians who grew up in South America, like everywhere, like Asians
Mm.
as a if you are looking at like a pan-Asianism,
Mm.
pan-Asia, diaspora abroad, like this is like our time. And as a lot of us Asian diaspora learn English, whether or not we grew up in a English speaking Western country like Canada, like maybe like you're Chinese, but you grew up in Germany or France, right? Like I've met people like that, or Korean who grew up in Germany, but you learn English. Like I interviewed a young of mine. He grew up in Germany. He speaks Korean, German, and English, and French too, actually. So like
Cool.
there's all these interesting mutations, right? I don't know if there's a better
Yeah.
word, but of humanity. And I think
Yeah.
this is the best time, especially as Asian diaspora, as Asia as a whole, this concept of Asia and Asian societies as a whole are exploding in prominence. Also, the diaspora by was it cup overflowing effect, whatever you call it, like is we're reaping the benefits of that. And so like when I don't know about you, well, like when I was a kid, no one knew what Korea was. I was 4, 5, 9 years old. People didn't know where Korea was. Now everyone
Yeah.
knows what BTS is. Everyone knows Psy Gangnam Style, right? Like, but when I was
Yeah.
a kid, I was the only Korean on the block, and no one knew where Korea was. I was always,
Mm.
are you Chinese or are you Japanese, right? Are you Ryan Takemiya? Because you see what I did there, because
Yeah.
you're yeah, you're half Chinese, half. Anyways, um,
Nice.
yeah. So like now it's like it's for me, this is like an auspicious, maybe coincidental uh perspective I have about my life, because I just think like, oh, I went like Korea went from obscurity, and I went from obscurity being like the only Asian. I was alone, and like no one knew about Korea. But now I live in Korea, and the whole world wants to come to Korea now, actually, because Korea is the shit. And with Hallyu, K-pop dramas, and all this culture and all this art, like music, amazing musicians. Uh, Now it's like it's like a rebirth. I've experienced several rebirths in my personal life, like periods of my life where like I ascend to another level, to another paradigm of thought and experience and how I look at the world. And then it's just like in tandem, Korea itself has like exponentially grown, not just economically, but is in the throes of like political, cultural, and I would say spiritual evolution. And that is also in tandem with the Asian Korean Americans, right? And like, so we can have these amazing discussions and we can have these connections both between diaspora from all over the world. Like I've met Koreans from every part of every continent except Antarctica. And it's so amazing to hear their stories and compare our struggles and our experiences, and to meet people like you, Ryan. You know, it's just like just different. We're both Americans, but we have different experiences, you know, different sides of the continent and whatever. And like this is so exciting. And not only that, there's an amazing, I'll shut up in a second. There's an amazing, it's amazing opportunity. Like there's never been more opportunity for like success and ways to even define success, because our parents, like they had to, and their parents, it was about finding food on the table, like dealing with famine, war, communism, what have you. And now like we have different problems. I say we have better problems. And so to honor them and to live our best lives, like to honor our ancestors' struggles, who like for thousands and tens of thousands of years, they killed each other, they raped each other, they pillaged each other, they were like backwards and like not educated, whatever, like all the, imagine like the worst of humanity experienced in the past tens of thousands of years, your ancestors, my ancestors. And now look at what we do. Look, we're talking to each other on the opposite side. Like it's daytime, morning here, it's nighttime over there. This is absolutely incredible.
Right.
And so like I don't want to, I want to like just like pound on this. Like this is the Asian American Renaissance. This is the Asian diaspora Renaissance worldwide. Like this is the most exciting time to be alive. And like every day, every year for me is more exciting and more interesting and better than the year before. So I want us, you and me, like what we're doing along with countless other Asian diaspora who are like, you know, like trying to live our best lives, who are trying to grow. Like we are part of this 21st century like movement, right? Like people will look back on these years and be like, oh, for Asian Americans, for Asian diaspora, for Asian civilization society, like there was some crazy shit going on. People were like, you know, like doing blockchain technology, and they were doing like amazing artistic endeavors, like with music and hip hop, experimental genres and stuff like that. Political upheavals, you know. So yeah, Renaissance, man, it's a rebirth.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a super exciting time, and I also think I would also say it's an important time for Asian Americans and everybody in the Asian diaspora to start reclaiming a lot of the economic, political, and especially cultural power that we have had to give up, or our parents and our grandparents had to give up in order to survive here, right? So it's an exciting time because a bunch of different things are happening. Not only is our population exploding here in America, but a lot of us are being lifted. We're lifting ourselves out of poverty, and so we are finding ourselves no longer needing to assimilate and do the things that our parents and grandparents had to do in order to survive, right? We don't have to open up laundromats and restaurants in order to make money. We can now become professionals and you know, thanks to their hard work, we have become professionals and doctors and lawyers and engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of us are being, you know, rocketed to the middle class. And you know, technology is democratizing a lot of things in terms of art and creativity and getting your creativity out into the world, connecting with other people, right? So there is no excuse really for Asian Americans and other people in the diaspora to not connect with each other, create with each other, and to reclaim a lot of the culture and traditions that we have had to hide or put away in the name of economic survival. You know, for so long we've actually internalized that this is being ashamed of our culture and traditions because they brought on us negative attention. and racism and hatred and attacks, and smelly school lunches brought insults and all of that, right? So but that is changing. All that is kind of changing right now, right? So like you growing up, you said you'd have kimchi, kimchi in your lunch pail, and people would make fun of you for it. But nowadays, in the year 2022, white people even seek out Korean restaurants looking for this type of stuff. It's become incredibly desirable. So here we are in this brand new, brave new world where all of a sudden our culture is not quite as objectionable as it once was to other people. We can embrace it. We have a little bit more economic stability to be able to embrace it and feel good about embracing it. So why don't we, right? I think it's actually rather important that we do that now, that we come together as a community. We create things together. We create new things together. We embrace our culture, and we let our culture live. We let it thrive. We evolve it instead of keeping it tucked away in the cabinet and away from everybody else. So it's an important time also because of, yes, as you're saying, the growing economic and political power of Asia itself, right? Asia itself is becoming a bigger player in world politics. And I think Asian Americans and other Asian diaspora communities need to firmly establish themselves, and this might sound controversial, but I think we need to establish ourselves as separate from Asia, but also like connected to Asia, but separate from Asia at the same time. Like we need to establish ourselves for who we are, unique to the countries that we live in, because I think at some point, once Asia gets big and bad and scary, other people are going to ask us. They're going to say, well, where do your allegiances lie? And I think we need to be able to say, well, we're Asian American. We're not, we don't really know what it's like to have grown up in Japan or China or Korea. We know what it's like to grow up here. That's something completely different. And while yes, we are connected to them, we are separate from them. There's actually a phrase that they use a lot, I think, in Southeast Asia that I love, and it goes same but different, right? And I think that perfectly encapsulates the ambiguity of the fact that we are the same as Asian people in Asia, and yet we are different. And so we must embrace the things that make us unique and different, because if we don't, then we're going to continually get lumped in, with people who we may not fully understand or identify with, and may not want to necessarily be lumped in with them in the ways that we're being lumped in with them, like specifically for in relation to COVID, for example, right? So in COVID here in America, the big thing is relating COVID with China, right? People think they call it a Chinese flu, the Chinese virus. And then we as Asian Americans are getting lumped into that, and we're getting attacked, sometimes quite literally attacked, physically attacked, because we are seen as one with this big bad notion of China. And I'm not saying that we should disown China necessarily, just that we need to establish our own identity here in America for ourselves, because we have a very unique identity. And I think we need to we need to proclaim it. We need to shout it to the world, tell everybody who we are, basically.
That is interesting. Yeah, in a way, it when you mentioned that, it kind of reminds me of like the good old Japanese internment camps in World War II. It's just like putting Japanese people into the internment, even though they supposedly had no allegiance, right, to the emperor during World War II. So like, how unfair is that? And
yeah, exactly. Like over like 3/4 of those people that were put in the internment camps were American citizens. They're born and raised here in America. And a lot of them didn't even speak Japanese. Like they didn't even, like my own grandparents like barely.
That's a comedy.
Japanese.
That's a comedy. That's a tragic comedy.
It is. It's incredibly tragic, right? So like but because there was no unique Japanese American identity that existed outside of that community or in the minds of other communities. They just thought, oh, they're Japanese, so therefore, you know, they must have allegiance to the emperor, obviously, because they're look at all these, they're Japanese people. So it just, it didn't, yeah, it was very, very tragic, really unfortunate. Yeah.
I like what you say. It's like, yeah, we need to sort of proclaim this Asian American identity, or even like a pan Asian identity, you know, because like for me, when I think of, I do subscribe, I'm down with it. I'm down with like an Asian American identity, you know. It's cool. Like I grew up with you know, Asian American friends who weren't Korean, and like we bonded, like, hey, we're Asian, we're like, our lunches smell, whatever, you know. So like I do appreciate that. And also I mean, I also think it's beautiful that like our Asian families collectively, you know, like immigrated to America, and like, well, our ancestors, or you know, our families like may have never met in Asia, or we might have been like historically enemies, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like, I don't know, Ryan, maybe your ancestors, your Chinese and Japanese ancestors like conquered and raped my Korean ancestors, because Korea got all these invasions from China and Japan, blah blah blah.
Right.
But now it's like, but like I don't care. Like I don't
Right.
care about the history, because that's, you're just you and we're both American. I think that's kind of cool.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And think about what a precedent that could set for the rest of the world. Look at us, the children of these cultures and countries that historically have been at each other's throats. Now here we are in this new country, and we are building bonds and friendships and building an entirely new community, where we are all one. I mean, that's quite literally the idea of like behind America, right? The idea is to like, you know, come together as one, e pluribus unum, you know, from all these places that used to hate each other. And I think that would be incredible to be able to say, look, I mean, I'm a perfect example, right? So like China and Japan, they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. But look at me, you know, and I can exist in this world, and I can exist and have Korean American friends and Indian American friends and everything. And that I think is so incredibly powerful, because if we can do it, then other people can do it, and we can do it with other communities as well. Like once our community becomes you know, more established, we understand ourselves and love ourselves, and we can love other communities in the same way, and then we can build those bonds. Everybody wants to break down the barriers, the big barriers. They want to break down the barriers between black and white, between Asian and black, between Latino and white, whatever. I think we need to break down the barriers, the smaller barriers first, right? So the smaller barriers between communities within the Asian American community, and then as a community as a whole, we can then reach out to other communities and build bridges with them. And I think that comes from knowing who you are and knowing your identity. You can only do it when you feel the confidence in yourself to do so. Basically, that's I think that has huge implications for racial reconciliation.
Yeah, that's great, Ryan, but I'm still going to secretly resent you and hold you responsible for the rape and death and the destruction of my people and my ancestors. I'm going to hold you personally responsible.
Perfect. I knew it. I knew it.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like for me, I mean, I call myself Korean American, and I like, yeah, cool. I identify myself fully as Korean American and Asian American. I think these are both great. And at the same time, like right now I'm living in Korea, and so like I'm like a Korean American in Korea,
Yeah,
video
what's that like?
calling. Oh, it's amazing. Some,
Fascinating.
I mean, where do I begin?
Oh
Where do I
man,
begin?
yeah,
But man, like there's so much stuff like to say about it. Like I should have a podcast
I'm
or something.
sure.
But
Right, yeah, exactly.
to briefly answer, oh, what's that like? In the beginning it was hard. And looking back, I made it harder than maybe it had to be, but I learned the language. You know, I file my taxes, I file paperwork in Korean, I can understand most of it. You know, I have Korean friends that I speak to in Korean. Now I can speak to my mom in Korean. When I first came to Korea, I didn't speak Korean. So it was really difficult for me to have all that like decades of shame and resentment and guilt for not knowing my own culture and my own mother tongue. So I always felt
Yeah.
like a defective person, like, oh, I'm so left behind. No one knows my struggle. I'm the only person who didn't grow up speaking Korean. So now I have to just fumble my way and embarrass myself 1,000 times stumble through a bajillion conversations until like I really improve my conversational Korean. But I fucking did it. I fucking did it, and I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. And my Korean's not
Nice.
perfect, you know, I'm not that great at writing or reading, but I'm getting better all the time. And the fact that I was able to overcome my inferiority complex, the idea that I could never learn Korean, has it gives me immense pride and love for myself. And the other thing, to actually answer your question, um, some gyopos, some overseas Koreans or Korean Americans, like they come to Korea, they'll have an attitude like, yo, like I'm American, like I'm not Korean, like I'm better than Korean people, you know, like. And so like Korean people can tell, and they're like kind of turned off. But like and those are like, those will tend to be, we say LA gyopos, right? LA Korean Americans, like they think they're the shit, whatever. And then so whenever sometimes I meet Korean people like, are you from LA? I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of, I'm not that kind of Kyopo. Like I grew up in, I was the only Asian, you know, like that kind of thing. But what I want to say is like, I used to resent Korean people for being Korean because like my parents were Korean. I didn't understand them. But now as time goes by, I love Korean people for who they are. It still bothers me, but I just think of them like my like family, because I mean my parents are straight up Korean. So I'm just like, oh, if I want to be a better person for my own personal happiness, I need to understand them and forgive them for any grievances, real or imagined. For me to become a superior human being, like a better person overall, in order for me to elevate in my spiritual journey, I need to forgive grievances, real or imagined,
That's
in my
amazing.
heart, mind, and past. And so that's what I do. So now I love Korean people, and I understand I'll never be Korean, and that's okay. I'll be Korean American. I was the only Asian growing up, and like my name is Mime, so I'm weird. Like my name isn't even Korean actually. So, you know, like
Oh,
there's
really? Wow.
yeah. So like like I have my life experiences. And now like I used to hate everything as a kid. Like, oh, I hated being in America, but it was all I knew. So I would go back from hating America to kind of being proud of being American. But oh, I'm not even a citizen because I wasn't born in America. So I was a green card holder for most of my life, you know. So I'm just like, oh, I'm not a citizen. So I guess like I'm not really American, but English is my first language, and American culture, this is all I know. But it's just like when I go home, there's these Korean people, they say they're Korean, but I've never been to Korea. So how would I know what Korean is, you know? um I went from like hating the world, hating Koreans, hating Korean, the idea of Korea, like a place I never grew up, but somehow because it made me different, it made me feel left out at school and the neighborhood. I resented being different. So I hated Korea. I hated Korean people, anything Korean. I didn't want to learn Korean. I resented. I was like, Mom, Dad, this is fucking America. Learn English, motherfucker. Right. That was my attitude as a kid.
Yeah.
and but they did their best. And I give them a lot more credit now. They're Before they were like villains, but now like I see them as heroes. So, anyways, I hated everything. I hated being Korean. I hated America. Now, like I'm so proud and grateful that I grew up in America, and I'm proud. I'm proud to call myself American and identify as such. And I'm also proud and humbled to be Korean, because like I come from this rich, like beautiful, dark and bright history, and like the future is like uncertain but also bright for Korea as a whole, North and South Korea, and also for Korean Americans and Korean diaspora worldwide. Like I'm so proud to be like part of this collective group, because in the end we're all going to die, and people are people. I get it, right? But for me, like I just think, like if I were my ancestors, I would be so like mind blown and proud and in awe that like this guy named Mime is wearing a bow tie in Korea and talking with this guy named Ryan on the other side of the planet. um it's like I've become fully life affirming. Like I love, even
Yes.
though like I accept every part. Like I don't have any more guilt or shame about being Asian or Korean. Oh, like I'm Asian, so I have a small dick. Like I don't care. Everyone here has a small dick. Everyone's Korean. I'm joking. But like
Well,
I learned all these things about life and myself, and now like
yeah,
I think I become more and more at peace with myself than I ever have been.
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that's what we should all be striving for. But one of the things that I like to tell Asian Americans, because I think your experience of hating your Koreanness is very common, very, very common in the community, because we've been led to believe that our Asianness is undesirable, right? But what that means is what's crazy about that, what's crazy to me is that because being the product of two cultures, Asian and American, means that we have actually two ways of doing things. We have two ways of looking at everything, right? Two perspectives. That means we also have two ways of solving problems. And then if you take it a step further, not only do we have two ways, but if you actually combine those two, then we have a third option, right? So this is the whole essence behind, the idea of cultural synthesis, or that, third culture essentially, right? So you take the Asian way of doing things, you take the American way of doing things, you meld them together, and you have a third way of doing it. So not only do we have three ways of looking at every single situation, three ways of solving every single problem, right? That's incredible because most people only have one, just one, and yet we have three. So it's like we have a superpower. It's like Asian Americans are this entire community of superhumans who have this incredible superpower of having three different ways of solving every problem. And they've been taught to believe that that is somehow undesirable. They've been taught to believe that that's somehow something to be looked down upon. I'm going around trying to tell everybody that this is actually something that everybody wants. I mean, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, right? And this is the center of the tech industry, and the tech industry is always running their mouths off about innovation this, innovation that, innovation. And they keep talking about innovation. They want people to be thinking about innovation. What is innovation? Innovation is creating new ways of doing things, right? So how do you do that? You take one old way of doing it, you take another old way of doing it, and you mash those two things together for a new way of doing things. So we, Asian Americans, our experience is the essence of innovation. We are born innovators. We've been forced to be innovators our entire lives. And yet the great irony of it is that we have been taught that is somehow something to be embarrassed or ashamed of. And I think we should be proud of it. I think we should be proud of it. We should embrace it, and we should use it to our advantage in work and life.
100%. Are you still with me? Man, no. Uh-oh. Okay. I hope the recording's still working. All right.
Oh,
okay,
no.
fam. Oh no, fam. All right.
The tin can between here and Korea got cut.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah. Oh well.
Sorry about that.
No, but yeah, as you were saying, sorry for the technical difficulties, fam. I'm gonna be too lazy to go back and edit that. But yeah, Ryan was going to something epic. Yeah, dude, I'm totally, yeah, we should be totally proud. And see, like, the thing is, dude, the truths that you just said, like what you said is like, yeah, one way and another way, the old and new, east and west, we mash it, like we find a new way of doing things, and we have this advantage, right? What you said is true, is no less truer than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago or since the dawn of time, this principle of like of innovation, right? But we just didn't know it when I was a kid. No one told me like, oh, you're of two cultures, so you have an advantage of potentially looking at the world in different ways, and that will allow you to be compatible in different work environments and different social situations, and you'll have a better, wiser, you'll have better discernments, right? You'll have more perspective, you'll have more compassion for other people. People will like, it was no less, what you said is completely true, and it was true when I was a kid, but no one told me that. No one told me that, like, oh, because I'm different, that means later on, like, I will have immense different perspectives and skills and abilities to offer the market, and what was I going to say? Like, what, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So when I was a kid, I was just like, oh, I wish I was just a Korean in Korea, and then or like, I wish I was just a white kid or a black kid like every other quote unquote American, like most Americans. But but now I realize like, oh, actually, like I'm proud and I'm grateful to be who I am. And like I needed to go through all those things to become the person who I am today. And so going back to like how like age is changing and stuff, and you have stuff like Crazy Rich Asians. To before I forget, I just want to really put it fucking out there, guys. If you have any doubts or any motherfucking shame, like a shred of anxiety or whatever, because you're Asian, whether you're fucking Chinese or Cambodian or mixed or like, you know, Vietnamese, Korean, what have you, if you have some sort of mixed Asian heritage, and I'll throw Indians too because they're Asians too, right? But I mean, of course, I'm
Absolutely.
mostly referring to East Asians because that's what I am.
Sure.
But shout out to all my West Central Asians as well. Uh, but like, you know, if you have any shred of anxiety or self-doubt or just like, oh, like I'm different, like cut that out. That's a fucking lie. It's fucking bullshit, right? And
Agreed.
a lot of it is just like maybe the society tells it. Maybe we can blame it on like, oh, the like, you know, what is it, like white systemic racism or whatever. Like, okay, like, you know, maybe that's where it started. But I think 99% of the time we keep it in our minds and we keep dwelling on it. So like that's, I think we like, first the world tells us, makes us go into a prison of our own mind, but then we're the ones who keep holding on to the bars. That's how I feel. I felt like I spent a lot of time as a kid victimizing myself, like, oh, this person doesn't like me because I'm Asian. Like I know that I'm different, and so they're obviously going to say something that is like offensive and piss me off, and I'm going to take it as a microaggression, you know. And I'm not saying like, you know, I'm not saying that like people aren't assholes and like, you know, like it's not cool if someone calls you a chink or whatever, but you know, like you should stand up for yourself. But what I mean is like a lot of times I feel like Asian Americans, we might be too sensitive, you know, we might be like the world is out to get us. And so like I know what that's like and I don't want to be a part of that. Me personally. And but anyways, to go back to my original point, Asians are fucking cool. We're like rich, we're powerful, we're sexy, we're artistic. Okay, there's never been a better time in human history, in America's history, to be fucking Asian. So fucking ride it, guys. Ride the Asian American Renaissance, the Asian worldwide Renaissance. If you're Asian, be fucking proud. If you don't know your mother tongue, if you don't know your mother culture, then and you're like half Korean or a quarter Korean or whatever. But like you have a right to pursue your heritage and learn the language. Go back to the motherland if you need a visa, you know, whatever, whoever you are. If you're Japanese American, you want to go back to Japan, you don't speak any Japanese, then like go on that journey if that's what you want, if you think there's something there for you. I would say that for me, it was the best decision of my life to come back to the motherland, get in touch with my roots, to find who I was. So I could kind of find out what I'm not. Oh, I know I'm definitely not Korean because Korean people look at me and they were like, this guy's not one of us, but he kind of looks like us, but he smells like a cheeseburger. So it's kind of weird. You know what I mean? So then, and then I'm just like, okay, no matter what, I'll always be a little different. And I'm still figuring out who I am. That's okay. What's important is I'm a good person. I'm likable. I'm reliable. And I deliver to people. And like, you know, what I do with my work, I do it meaningfully. And I give good value to all the people in my life. And like, that's what matters, is building good connections, giving good value to him and spending quality time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're Asian, be proud. You're sexy. You're beautiful. You're like, mwah, 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 mwah. Like all the things that I wish someone had told me. Mom, you're fucking beautiful. You're Korean. You're American. You're the only Korean kid. Oh, those other kids, they're jealous. Like, don't worry about them. You're gonna grow up successful. You're gonna grow up like women are gonna love you. You're gonna have like lots of different friends. Like you're gonna be friends with millionaires and like successful entrepreneurs and cool artists, people who like love and respect you for who you are. Mom, you're gonna be fucking amazing. Don't even worry about all this shit. It doesn't matter. If someone had told me that, I would have accelerated my growth 10 times. I'd be 100 times the person who I am now. So guys, don't waste your fucking time.
Well, you know, one of the other things I think is really exciting about being Asian American is that it is so open-ended as to what being Asian American is. Like it is such a blank page.
You can define it.
Yeah, exactly. We each and every single one of us has the ability to go out there and define it. We keep asking ourselves, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean to be Asian American? Well, we actually have the power to answer that question. And that's exciting because we as Asian Americans haven't existed for that long, only, you know, a few hundred years. And because we've been holding on to Asian culture for so long, you know, the Asian American culture has not quite yet been written. It is in the process of being written. It is in the process of being created. And that means that every single one of us can have a say in what that is. So if you want Asian American culture to be, you know, whoever you are, if you want it to be more like you, more like your style, then go out there and do it. I mean, that's the beauty of this moment. You know, another part of the exciting thing about this very moment in time that we're in is that not only do we have the ability to create this new culture, but we can do it in it's so much easier than it was before. We can now make podcasts and talk to people around the world, like you were talking about, right? Like we can you know, videotape ourselves and put it on YouTube and have everybody in the community see it. It's incredibly easy to write the future of what Asian America can be. So not Asian Americans, you know, like you tell them that they're sexy and they're beautiful, and they are, but not only that, but they have agency and they have
Agency,
power
yes. The
to
Asian
go.
agency. They have
Yeah,
agency.
exactly.
Yes. Oh
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. To go out there and show everybody who they are and show everybody how awesome and sexy they are. And they should. I think everybody should. They, you know, and you know, they should be making their own web series and TV shows and you know, writing their own plays and shooting their own movies and making their own music, because we can, and people are, which is exciting. That's the exciting part about it. And so even you, the lone Asian American in the middle of Iowa, who's sitting there, who's, you know, 16 years old and feeling like nobody gets them. First of all, the rest of us do. We get you. And second of all, you know, tell us who you are. Come out and tell us your story. Tell us what it means to be Asian American in the middle of Iowa, because I guarantee you that not only will a ton of people identify with you, but you will be writing you will be creating what it is to be Asian American. That's it. People keep thinking that it's something that's set in stone. It is not set in stone. It's being changed every day, and we are the ones changing it. So mine, you know, your viewers can't see you right now, but you're wearing this bow tie and suspenders, and that's your style. And I fucking love that. That's your style, and you're proud of it, and it's all over your website, it's all over your logo. And that, because that's your style, because that is you, that becomes part of Asian America. That becomes part of us, you know, because you are, you know, that's it. That's how it works. So you are adding your style to the broader Asian American identity. So even though you are all the way in Korea, like, you are helping define what it means to be Asian American. So that's, you know,
Oh,
I love that. That's what I love
that's
about it.
so beautifully put. So beautifully put. Thank you so much, man.
Hell
That
yeah.
means a lot. And like I feel the same way to you, like down to your beautiful hippie hair and your beard, your Chinese
My
Japanese jean
my
beard, you know, that I can
surfer dude, yeah.
your surfer dude, you know. Yeah, dude, like it's really beautiful what you just said. Yeah, to that 16-year-old Asian American dude in Iowa who's probably jacking off to porn and eating Cheetos, playing Call of Duty, complaining
Right.
about how his life isn't fair and his parents don't understand him. If you're listening to this,
Hey, I
man,
mean,
you have
that's
so much more advantage than we had. At least than I
right.
had as a kid. So
Yeah.
like this is the most amazing time to be alive for any human,
Embrace it.
and yeah, especially for Asians, especially for Asian diaspora, especially for Asian
Yeah.
Americans. Um, and I would also like to note the grass is always greener on the other side. And you know, you think like,
Mm.
okay, here's one thing, one big lesson of living here in Korea is the envy that Koreans have, right? So the mainlanders,
Mm.
whether it's China or Japan or you know, you go to Taiwan, like there will be people, the mainlanders, the motherlanders, they will, when they meet the overseas Asians that grew up abroad in the West, like there's a degree of envy there, and it's very real. Because
Oh yeah.
especially for Korea is a hyper competitive site. It's a fucking kimchi meat grinder. It's
Yeah,
super
yeah, totally.
competitive. It's like people, it's like its highest suicide rate in the world, right? It's just like the
Right.
culture. And like, I mean, I think Korea is one of the greatest countries in the world. Don't get me wrong, but it's got a
Mm.
lot of problems
Mhm.
and one of the world's highest suicide rate and all that. Similar to
Yeah.
Japan, you know, it's just like it's high intensity and it's like a slow pressure rice cooker and kimchi rice
Nice.
cooker and it's hard. And so like I've complained to my cousin, you know, like my mom and dad, like I have this resentments because I didn't speak English, blah blah blah. And my cousin who's older than me, he's
Yeah.
like, dude, you're you know, I got a bunch of different cousins, but dude, your family is the one that made it to America. You made it. You're the lucky one. Don't you understand that?
Yeah.
You learn English.
Yeah.
You speak with an American accent. Do you have any idea how valuable it is? It's super fucking valuable
Oh,
here.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah, totally.
I'm so hireable. I'm so hireable here just because of my accent alone. And so like just like whenever you think like, oh, I'm the only Asian kid in all white neighborhood or something like that, or it doesn't even have to be Asian American, but maybe you're like the only Asian kid in an all Latino neighborhood in Mexico or LA or something like that. Just remember that you probably have way more opportunities than like your Korean mainland counterpart. Like the average Korean would kill to be in your shoes. To have the opportunities just by being in this place called America. Like it really is, like I appreciate it more than ever. So coming to Korea made me appreciate being American, being a native English speaker, just off that alone. Like I'm quitting my job this month after years of singing to kids over the telephone. This is my job. This has been my job. It's a great job. I love this company, but I'm quitting. I'm reducing my hours significantly. Like I was able to do this job. Yeah, they pay me for that. And the pay is decent. And like, I love the job, but it was because I grew up in America and I'm a native English speaker. Right. Yeah. And not only that, I'm able to transition from this into a full-time copywriting career. And it's because I can read and write in English. Right. And I'm a native English speaker to boot. And it's just yo, there's so many people in the world who are like applying to work in schools in Korea to teach English, but they're not even native English speakers. They can't even get a visa. They can't. So what I'm saying is like, look, if you grow up in the West and you're an Asian American and you are even at least a native English speaker, you can go to Asia, you can go anywhere, you can teach English and you can make money off that for the rest of your life and just go see the world and travel. Okay. You have no excuse. If you don't mind going, if you can travel, you can make it work. And not only that, you can do copywriting, you can do remote work from home, anywhere in the world. Like that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to be like, I'm not rich and I'm not like retirement mode. I'm far from it. But like from next month, from April, I can just work from a cafe in front of a beach and like I'll be making money, like money will be coming into my bank account, like because I'm a native English speaker. My brothers are doctors, like they're amazing doctors, amazing surgeons, but like I don't even have to do that. Like I can be a copywriter, right? So just consider yourself super lucky. You have no excuse. And just so you know, you have no excuse. You can reach out to guys like me and Ryan. Just shoot us a message, shoot us an email. Be like, hey, I'm stuck in my life. Hey, my parents don't understand me. I'm just like, I've been there. You can do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. No one told me this, so I'm saying this to you now, motherfuckers. I believe in you. You can fucking do it. You have no excuse. You can fucking do it. Think about our Asian ancestors, all the shit they went through, our immigrant parents, just several generations back, all the shit they went through, just so you can just feel sorry for yourself, just so you can blame the world, just so you feel, oh, the job market, oh, inflation, what's the point? No, that's all a lie. You can do it. You can fucking succeed. Art, power, money, like whatever it is you want, like love, genuine connection, that you can do it. You can become the person of your dreams, because that's who I am. I'm the motherfucking person of my dreams. I'm fucking flesh and blood. I fucking did it, man. I fucking did it, and I'm doing it. I'm becoming a better person every day. If I can do it, I was a hopeless motherfucker. You can do it too. You can do it too. Wow. I believe in you.
I'm inspired. I believe I can do it now.
Yeah, you can totally do it. Yeah, Ryan, you can do it. You can totally. You're doing lots of cool shit. Yeah,
you remind me of like, well, you're what you just said reminded me of when I was young. A lot of my first gen and second gen Asian American friends, they would they would go to Chinese school or whatever language school, and they would listen to the music from Asia, like J-pop and K-pop, and they would try and like verse themselves in Asian culture, right? And then they would go to Asia to visit their families over there, and they would try really hard to like get rid of their American accent, but they would go over there and their cousins would be able to hear it immediately, and their cousins would be like, oh yeah, you speak with such a heavy accent, and they would come back,
you reek of cheeseburger.
Yeah, exactly. You smell American, right? So like these friends of mine, they would come back and they would feel so embarrassed. They'd feel so ashamed. They'd be like, like I can't, speak fluently or whatever, or blah blah blah. And I know. And they felt so ashamed, like they felt like they were getting made fun of, or felt like they were, they weren't Asian enough. And what's crazy to me is that like I being fourth generation, I didn't feel that pressure to try and fit in or whatever. So when I went to Asia, when people pointed out my accent and everything, it felt a little different. I thought that it was more of like they just wanted to know what it was like to be from America. Like they were like, oh, you're American. That's interesting. What is that about? And I have a sneaking suspicion that my friends, who when they were young, they went over to Asia and they felt embarrassed. I have a sneaking suspicion that their cousins weren't making fun of them, that their cousins or the people who pointed out their accents were probably actually just saying like, oh, that's interesting. You speak with an American accent. That's so like, that's what was it like growing up in America? And the Asian Americans felt all this like shame and embarrassment when we didn't need to feel shame and embarrassment. We are actually, as you say, we have this like incredible value of being having proximity to American culture and Americanness, and that is something that a lot of people in Asia actually really desire and really want. And so they are genuinely interested to know what it's like to be Asian American, and yet we go over there and all we do is we try and remove everything American about us to try and fit in, right? So it's just your experience is very much reminiscent of that.
It's a comedy. It's actually, and here's the thing. And now we're artists. We can make comedies about it. We can tell funny jokes about that whole experience. Because isn't it ridiculous? We're like, oh, like we went to America and we have this immense benefit of being westernized and having American culture or whatever. And then we go back to the motherland to try to fit in the Asian box. We're like, oh, you smell like cheeseburger. You're actually funny. That's interesting. And we're like, no, and like at the time, maybe it was traumatic. Maybe like the way or the tone that they said it, we took it too personally, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. It's so funny. Like all the trauma and all the things that I perceive as when you're a kid, everything is big and serious. So everyone has trauma, right? Whether you're Asian, whether you're black or white, like everyone has a traumatic experience at some point in their childhood, right? And when you're a child, everything is scarier. Okay. And the thing is, and I'm telling myself these days, like I choose not to give trauma power. I choose like, yes, it was something like I had a tendency to give trauma power, and that's why I'm like this. But now I'm just like, no. I choose not to give trauma. I choose to stop giving trauma power, and I choose to rewrite my story so that I can help the next generation carve and write an even better story, a more beautiful story, one that's more whole, one that's more sound, one that's like on a higher level of conscious vibration. And like like I love that you shared that. Like for me also, there's two things. Like if you're in Korea, like for example, maybe you're the kind of like you just got back to the motherland, or like you're on a trip to see your cousins. And it's like if you're in America and someone like makes fun of you for being Asian or whatever, like it's like don't take it personally. But if you're gonna take it personally, just be like, that guy has no fucking idea, like that guy has no fucking idea. So like he can't judge you. It's like it's not even worth it. It's a lot of times. And then when it comes to like Korean people, like a taxi driver or whatever, or like a friend's acquaintance or like a cousin, like, oh, you've been here in Korea for how long and you still can't speak Korean or whatever.
They're just jealous.
Like like it's that. But like one, like it's a spiritual practice, because I realized, oh no, I cannot, I this is not going to help me to get upset. It's just the way that the world is. It's how the society is. This is how people are. It's not going to. Do not spike cortisol and bring out the past trauma. No. Just come up, reply with a smile. Like, 네, 저 미국에서 살다 왔어요. Like I grew up in America and I came here, And then, but if they're really assholes about it, like I can just tell in my mind, it's like that fucking 40-year-old taxi driver who's like being like impolite to me about my accent or whatever, or like, he's like not just curious, but like there's some like resentment in there, right? I know in my mind and in my heart who I am. I know that I did something that this old fucker probably would never have the courage or the balls to do, which is to come back to the motherland, try to learn the mother tongue. Like the shame of like walking up to girls in a bar in stumbling in Korean. It's just like, oh, I have low self-confidence as a guy already growing up in America, but it's like, I'm stumbling through my own mother tongue. So these girls are like, oh, who's this retard? Who's this idiot? He's Chinese. He can't speak Korean, And like the amount of shame, right? I overcame that. I have a Korean girlfriend now, guys, and we speak in Korean, and it's great.
Wow.
And I'm so proud, like that, the things that I thought I would never deserve, that I could speak to my mother in my mother tongue, that I could speak to my girlfriend in our mother tongue, that I could share these experiences. We could joke together in Korean. Oh my God, nobody's fucking better than me. I don't know a single motherfucker who went through what I did and succeeded in overcoming inferiority complex. And if you are that person, if you know someone, then please introduce them to me, because like, then like I'm one in a motherfucking million, and I overcame this. So if I can do this, then you can too, is what I want to say.
Yeah. And now imagine if our entire community had that mindset. Imagine how unstoppable we would be.
The dragon, the tiger.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Agency. You said it earlier. Agency.
Yeah, agency. Yeah. If we all realized our true agency, and we all realized how powerful we really were, and we all realized how fucking awesome we really were, it would be incredible. We would just be an entire community of self-actualized, self-confident people who could do anything. And I'm hoping that that day will come, and we can do that.
This is the seeds, man. We're spearheading the fucking rebirth of the Asian diaspora. Like, this is the Renaissance. You're the Renaissance. I'm the Renaissance, right? And the people who are listening to it, like they listen to these ideas, and it sprouts a beautiful seed, like the lotus flower, man, deep in our hearts and minds, man. It's this rich heritage. It's like the full like potential unlocked and realized, the inner dragon, the inner tiger, right? And I love what you said, the agency, this untapped, oh my God, this raw, immense, potent agency. I was gonna say come, raw, potent come, but agency, like, and it's sexual energy as well. Actually, funny enough, sexual energy, but just spiritual energy, just like a raw emotion from like a lot of shit that we did to ourselves as like this, like maybe this rigid Confucian hierarchical structures, and like, the nail that sticks out gets a hammer. Maybe we did a lot of it to ourselves, this kind of abuse, but now we have freedom. Now we can speak freely. Right, we can cast our voices and our souls on the airwaves like you and I are doing now, and it's going to change people's fucking lives.
Absolutely.
We're the inner tiger, the inner dragon. It's the time is now. Renaissance, the Asian diaspora Renaissance, roar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Let it out. Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely untapped potential that is inside of us that we need to let out. We absolutely need to let it out. Right, yeah, let it all out. Let everything out. I love it. Oh
man, like this is so much fun, but I want to be mindful of your time. Sure. And well, actually, okay, there's one thing I kind of want to go back upon, which I forgot, but basically, the idea of like telling your parents you want to be an actor, or like telling you want to be a creative, this in itself is an interesting creative project, right? There's probably like movies, and one guy that I interviewed, Danny Cho, he's a LA born and raised stand-up comedian, and he and I we had a talk on the show about like, the struggles of like, you want to be a good son and like work a good job, a good stable job to take care of your parents, but at the same time you only have one life and you want to pursue your dreams and what you're passionate about. So everyone's path and situation is different. But what I would, for me, I'm also coming from a different place because I have two older brothers. So that gives me the license as the spoiled youngest child to go be like like a fruity artist hippie. Because my brother is like already the responsible, they've been in school for decades, and like, like they're hardcore. Like my brothers are amazing. But like I can be like, I'm the guy, I come to Korea and I find myself and play open mics, and I become a club promoter, and I get to travel throughout Asia. Me and my brothers are studying, and they're like, putting together, someone's like face ripped off by a motorcycle, and they make a lot of money doing that. So
wow.
But what I'm saying is like, being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, like that's all cool, if that's what you're about. And I think as an Asian American, and to have agency, and as we spearhead this Renaissance, as we spearhead and like forge our own fucking identities, I think this is just an idea, and again, everyone's situation is different, but I would say, like, let's say, if you can find, if like, let's say you have to take care of your parents, like they're ill or handicapped. I mean, again, everyone's situation is different, and maybe like I'm not suited to give advice, but if you can make money first, actually, if forget parents, like this is what I think. If you make money first, find a way to make money first for yourself, and then like save up a bunch, like 6 months of living expenses at the least, and then like go try to make money off doing whatever, or like, you know, slowly transition. And if your parents are in the picture, like you need to take care of them, then like the importance of that is multiplied. You know what I'm saying? It's like make money first, and like make sure that you're okay, and then if your parents are in the mix, then you need to, you know, then like good luck, right? And but I think it would be important to like have a significant amount like saved up, or maybe build some stable income, passive income ideally, and then you're free to do whatever creative actor artsy stuff that you want, and then try to make money off that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's no real one way to do it. Everybody's different. Everybody's in a different situation. But I think that's a fantastic idea and very, very smart. You know, a lot of, you know, I think there's a big misconception about artistic careers in that, you know, a lot of parents, number one, parents think that they don't make any money, which is not true. Or B, that you know, they're going to, basically, you're going to struggle as an artist, which is also not necessarily true. I mean, it's basically like being a creative is like starting your own business. You are essentially an entrepreneur. Yes, you will spend a few years, you know, probably not making a lot of money, but if you keep working at it over time, things will come. So, yeah, I mean, I think saving up in order to then do that, to then embark on that, starting a business, then that's a fantastic and smart idea. And that's one of the things that you could have in your arsenal to tell your parents. If you are an aspiring creative, you can say, well, I've thought this out, I've planned this out, and here's my plan. Because, you know, a lot of times, as I said in my article, a lot of times what'll happen with immigrant parents is that they're worried about a number of things. And one of those things is that they're worried that you haven't thought it out, that you don't have a plan. They're worried that you're just acting on impulse, and that you just want to do this because you want to do it. But if you can reassure them that you've actually thought it out quite a bit, and that you've come up with a plan, then that'll put them a little more at ease. That'll help them understand that this is a viable alternative, right? And if you bring them, you have to like sort of walk them through the process and explain to them, you know, the industry that you want to go into. Explain to them that there are lots of opportunities in that industry. You got to sort of help them understand how that industry works. The more they understand how an industry works, the more they'll be open to you know, considering you as in a career there. You know, it's all about communication and knowledge, and helping your parents understand where you're coming from, and also understanding where they're coming from, and what they've gone through to get to where you are, essentially.
Right. So it's a really tricky thing. And look, like what you said is so dope, man. But the thing is, like, when we were teenagers, like there was no one to kind of like tell us these ideas, or at least explain this perspective of like what our parents went through. So we should respect them, and then walk them through these things and explain, you know, hey, we thought this out, right? Like it's so beautifully put, eloquently put, Ryan. You know, again, everyone's family situation is going to be different, but like you have this, then you can make it work. And it's important as the Asian American, as the Asian diaspora spearheading, you know, like East meets West philosophy. So we don't want to be I personally don't want to be completely one or the other, you know? So it's like, what I'm saying is like, I live for me. Like at the end of the day, this is how I feel. I'm an individualist, you know, like it's all about me and my rights. And like, I didn't choose to be born, so I'm gonna just live for
American.
me. Right. Like I still subscribe to that, but now it's the other side of the coin. It's not just pure Western individualism. The Eastern collectivism is just like, oh, actually, I am a better person. I'm a better individual. I'm happier, and I'm prouder, and I'm humbler. I'm a better person if I affirm the Eastern collectivist mindset, and like, I not out of duty, like, oh, you have to honor your parents because they raised you and you have to do what they say. No, it's just because actually it makes me feel, not because like I have to forgive and to understand and to actually serve the parents, actually serves me as a, like, it builds karma. You know, it builds karma, because what goes around comes around. If you resent your parents, then when you have kids, your kids are going to resent you. Right. It's like a, I don't want to say it's inevitable, but I can't describe it, but you see that pattern. Like, oh, I'll never be like my dad. He's an asshole. But you know what I mean? So, if I want to have like gracious kids who like respect me and blah, blah, then I need to respect my mom. I need to forgive her. I need to understand her. So actually, not because out of a duty from like the Confucian hierarchical bullshit or whatever, but, but no one told me this. I had to figure it out. After coming here.
Breaking the cycle starts with you. It starts with us, right? Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
So I totally, hey, you have a passion. You want to be artist. You only live one life, man. Go for your fucking dreams. But if you're, as long as your parents are in the picture, if you can somehow find, I pray to the ancestors, God, like, may the ancestors guide you and bless you, my brothers and sisters listening to this. Like, if you can find a way to like insist on your own being and you follow your dreams and your own path, while at the same time honoring and respecting your parents because of their sacrifices, right? What's going to happen is like all that good karma, I don't know, for lack of better, like all that goodwill is gonna like in the community and in your parents' hearts and minds, and like you're like, oh, not only did I pursue my path, but I did my best to have a clean conscience and respect everyone in my family along the way, and everyone's family is different. Maybe like your parents are like, they're just, I don't know, they're some, like, it's just too fucked up, too trauma, they'll never change, I don't know. And one situation is different, so obviously I can't speak for it, but like, I hope you consider that very strongly. And I thought I would never be like, I thought I hate my mom. I'll never talk to her again. Like, I hope she fucking dies. But now I'm like, my mom is the most precious woman in my life now. Like,
wow,
I admire her. I honor her. Like, I genuinely honor her. And I say like, Mom, I love you. Thank you so much for all your sacrifices and everything that you did. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were going through. You were in pain. I was in pain. Dad was in pain. But now, like, we can forgive each other. Now, like, while we still have time together, we can like have great conversations. I talk with my mom all day if we have time.
That's beautiful. Like, that's beautiful.
It's great. So if I can do it, if I can transform my mind towards and my attitude towards my parents, consider that maybe what you thought was impossible, that of like forgiveness and like honoring your parents and like fulfilling both your individual path as well as fulfilling the greater filial piety shit, consider that these things will make you a better person, a superior person, not just as an Asian person and not just as a American or Western person, but somewhere in the between. And in that way, you'll have greater perspective, greater compassion, and greater potential that the world needs to find peace and harmony.
That's perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's fantastic, man. I agree. Couldn't agree more.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan. Dude, like, I feel like we could talk more, but we'll have you on at another point. Yeah. If people want to follow you or reach out, like, how should they contact you? How should they reach out?
Well, folks can find me on Instagram at Ryan K Takemiya. That's Takemiya. Or if you're on TikTok, I am also on TikTok at Asian American Thought. That's my handle on TikTok.
Oh, because you're an Asian American Thought. I see.
Because I'm sorry, think guys. A lot. These are just my thoughts. Just my thoughts.
Yes, all your thoughts. All your Asian American thoughts. Got it. Well, Ryan, it was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, man. And guys and girls listening to this, like, please, like, if you're listening to this, you are Asian America. You are the Asian diaspora. You can forge your own identity. In this day and age, there's never been more opportunity to make meaning out of your own life. At the end of the day, we all die, and like, bajillion years down the line, like, no one remembers anyone's names, and like, it's the heat death of the universe, but in your time, in your valuable, precious time, like, you can find meaning, you can define meaning, you can forge your own identity, and you can usher in the Asian diaspora Renaissance worldwide, the Asian American Renaissance, and you can forge a brighter path for the next generation. They're going to do all kinds of crazy shit that we can't even imagine, and it starts with us today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Ryan. And God bless you all. Yes, we'll talk to you next time. Mime time.
All right.